Sophie, we've come out here today down to Dorset to Hemsworth farm. We've a lovely herd of cows behind us here. Could you give us maybe a background to the farm and when you set it up?
Yes, I came here in 2011 and there hadn't really been any livestock here for decades. It's an organic farm, so it needs livestock. The soil was very depleted, and so the mission has been over the last 12 years just to improve soil. And though we brought in someone else's replacement dairy heifers for about 6 years, it doesn't quite have the concentration of livestock that the soil needs. We're arable as well. The grazing rotation is integrated into the arable crops. But the dairy herd, I mean, we started planning it probably 6 years ago, but we're now in our third lactation. And the cows you see here are all from Sweden.
Very good. So did you buy them as cows or calves or maiden heifers, or what was your...
We originally went out to Sweden to look at the Pro Cross, but that's too big for an outdoor system. The cows here are outside 24/7, they're outwintered. And while we were there, so-called Viking Reds, which are a Scandinavian composite breed, really took our eye. And I like the size of the ones that are sort of an ideal composition. They're bigger than Frisian Jersey Cross, but still very compact, very good, utilise grazing very well. And the attraction of Scandinavia is the high health, because they don't have IBR, BVD. Yonis was a big one, starting from scratch with a completely, as it were, clean farm. Didn't want to have Yonis, you know, at the beginning and all the management complications of that. And starting TB free was a big attraction as well. So we imported 300 bulling heifers at the beginning of COVID. So that was spring 2020. Luckily, Sweden remained open. They came over in loads of 50 every 3-4 weeks. And we started sex semen AI June 2020. So our first spring milking, it's a block spring milking system, block spring calving, was 2021, and we're now in our third lactation.
Okay. So when do you calve?
So ideally the 1st of March, there are
Yeah.
obviously some early ones.
Yeah.
The first year we started sort of more like middle of February, and we found that was too soon for the grass growth. It wasn't a kind spring anyway, it was very cold, very dry. But we've moved it to March just to be able to have early grass and utilise it straight away.
Okay.
They calve outside.
Yeah. So your organic milk?
Yes,
Yes.
we sell to Arla.
Okay. So again, maybe it's just a question, why go organic? What did, you know,
Well,
what was the motivation on that?
when I arrived at the farm, 2011, about 2/3 of the farm had very recently been converted. So I took it on in its second year of conversion, and I had to fulfill the conversion period, you know, the DEFRA payments for 5 years. So going back to high input farming on that section wasn't an option. And we farmed 2 systems side by side. About 250 acres was, you know, conventional chemical farming, and then we had 750 of the organic. And we could benchmark them for 3 years. I tried to be as open-minded and impartial as possible during those 3 years to see which system was going to really work for us. And after 3 years, I became incredibly interested in the organic system. I just found it a more compelling way to farm. But also the finances demonstrated that our margins were greater on the organic, and that meant resilience to me. And as a new farming operation, you know, cash flow was tight.
Yeah.
And it meant I didn't have to spend all my money on inputs. And you know, I could do other things on the farm that needed reparations and some capital investments and things. So then we decided to turn the whole farm organic. And last year we converted another 150 acres. And this year I've just rented 100 acres from a neighbour, and that's just gone into organic conversion with a silage lay, red clover, crimson clover, vetch.
Yes.
Don't do that. And lucerne.
Very good. So as we look down at the grass or the lay, so you haven't gone for conventional perennial ryegrass, you've gone for a mixed sward, have you?
All a mixed sward. I think I said the soils were very depleted here when we arrived.
Yes.
And a neighbouring farmer who helped me a lot, he had watched the farm over a few decades, and he said it'll take you 15 years to restore the fertility on that farm.
Due to continuous tillage, is that right? Cropping?
Continuous tillage,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah. And this is light soil, so the base rock is solid chalk.
Yeah.
And we've only got 40 centimetres of topsoil.
So would you plough or not, or is there any ploughing, or is it all mintill?
So this will stay down as a grazing lay, very diverse grazing lay for 4 or 5 years.
Yeah.
And then they'll be out wintered on it in the last year. So we take them all out in the spring to minimise fertility leaching. And yeah, we will have to plough for the first crop. And that has generally been wheat and beans as a mixture.
After your 5-year period here?
After
say,
my
you'll have a
5-year
break.
period,
yeah.
Second cereal is winter oats, which
Right.
actually we sell to Ireland
Right, interesting.
on a contract there. The cows eat oats, they eat the beans we grow, and also barley peas we're beginning to do more and more of because that seems to suit them very well. So yeah, here we are, year 12. When the other farmer said 15 years to rebuild the soil, I thought, oh yeah, it won't be that bad, 6, 7 years. But we needed these cows, we needed the kind of rotational grazing system, the intensity of the number of cows to really start to see the soils change.
And what are you seeing in reality from the cows then? Is it the organic matter? Is it the dung? Is it whatever? Is it intense grazing?
I think it's by having the cows as an income generative enterprise, it means that we can afford quite expensive lay mixes. You know, they are with sandfoin, lucerne, chicory, bird's foot trefoil, plantain. You know, they are a cost, but we're getting a return on the establishment of that. And it also means it makes more sense to leave them in for 4 or 5 years in trying to get a cereal more quickly. And so it's a combination of the organic matter has built up a lot and, you know, just the nitrogen element of them being on it throughout the year.
Okay, yeah. So they're a very nice animal to look at anyway. Obviously the herd is very different.
Yeah, we haven't got, it's not very even yet.
Yeah.
But we'll get there.
Breeding wise then, say your spring calving, as you say, you know, do you use sex semen or what's your policy across the board?
Sex semen on selected animals for the first 6 weeks.
Yeah.
And then, and we do use some beef straws as well. We use some Angus straws. And then it's bulls. We've got stabilizers and Angus for anything that hasn't taken.
Okay.
Or that isn't, you know, fit for whatever reason we haven't chose it as a replacement.
Yes. And so do you keep those bull calves or do you sell them in the local market as organic? Or?
For the first couple of years, I was able to sell nearly all of them to another organic farmer who takes them through to finish. And I really liked that supply chain.
Yeah.
He's not too far away, and they would just all go off at 12 days old, 2 weeks old. Last year we were closed down with TB for 6 months, and it meant that we only went clear just in the middle of calving. So a lot went to market, to Froome Market, you know, which have looked after us really well. And yeah, it was all right. I think the markets definitely prefer Angus to stabilisers.
Okay.
Which is a shame because we like the stabiliser bulls. But yeah, no, all that went well.
Yeah. So you were saying then maybe on your investment, all cows there's no housing really for the winter, so everything is outside. And obviously the land type suits, but... So.
Yeah, I mean, some days you think some housing would be good.
Yeah.
But actually, they cope incredibly well.
Yes.
It's not like it gets bitterly cold here. It does get wet. But they're moved twice a day throughout the year, even when they're dry.
Yeah.
And you might think one day, whoa, it looks a bit rough, but it's amazing how resilient these herbal lays are.
So you'll winter on a herbal lay plus silage, is it?
Yes, so winter on the final year of a herbal lay. Right. So, you know, it's got lots of mass and structure to it underfoot. Yeah. So, you know, there is a degree of damage limitation there. I mean, the mud, even when it's really bad, doesn't really come over their fetlock at all.
Yeah.
And then we supplementary feed silage twice a day in each break they get. Yeah.
Bales behind the wire, or to have full access around it?
We roll it out. Yeah. So we've got a hustler roll out for the round bales.
Yes.
So that every cow, you know, nothing has to compete for feed.
Yes.
And then we've also got a Roland for we put a lot of silage into ag bags.
Okay.
So it's chop fine.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. Makes good quality silage.
Good. It's something like you'd see in New Zealand or Australia, the system.
Yeah, well, you should talk to Andrew about the finer details of it, because he worked only in New Zealand and Australia before coming here. So that was one of the, you know, really big things, is to have someone that really understood the grazing system. Yes. Yeah, that's a real skill.
Yeah. So production-wise, if I can ask on the cows, what would you expect in a year for them to produce?
Well, the first year, our original plan had been to only milk once a day. And that's what we did, because they were all freshly calved heifers. Everything was the same age. And that was about 3,500 litres. And then second year, we felt they really needed to go twice a day, both for them because they're good genetics, but also financially it's stacked up better. So they do now milk twice a day, and that was about 5.3 last year. Okay. And we're going to be well over that this year. I think the optimum is going to be 5.5, 6. Yes. I mean, Sven, who's here, who I bought some of the cows off, he's not such a grass-based system, obviously, but he's organic and has a similar hard feed diet. And he's doing 6,800 in Sweden.
Grazing or indoors?
It's limited, the grazing, but on an organic diet. Yeah. So our target has been, you know, 1 million litres. Yes. And originally I was going to have 350 cows on once a day, and I just wouldn't have been able to feed that many. You know, the farms, the forage production's not good enough, and the farm's not big enough. So I'm very happy. I think we'll get to 300 probably over the next few years as grass production goes up. That's the plan.
That's the plan. Good. So infrastructure-wise, we might have a look at it there later, but when you started up the farm, was there tracks here, fences, water, or what did you do?
What there was is having had an arrangement with another organic dairy farmer locally. He kept his young stock here, And we did that for 6 years, and that afforded the opportunity to put infrastructure in, boreholes, fencing,
Yeah.
the water system. And when we decided to do the dairy, we needed to do tracks. We've got a lot of our own chalk,
Yeah,
it's
it's not
like
far
the White
away.
Cliffs of Dover.
Yeah.
And then obviously putting the parlour in.
Yeah. That was probably the biggest investment, was it?
That was the biggest investment, definitely. But we first of all looked at a milking bale. But I'm not an owner operator, and so I think to get a really good herd manager, you need more infrastructure than
Yes.
that. So we've gone for a Waikato, swing over, fairly simple system, but we do have ACRs and things.
Yeah.
It has got a few added benefits.
And your cow
And we're
collars as well.
feeders in there too.
Yeah. Good. So the
Yeah.
feed then, is that homegrown inside in the parlour, or are you buying some of that?
No, we grow about 50%, but we buy in other organic concentrates and we mill it on site.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So do our own mixture,
Okay.
and we can, alter it and tweak it as requires according to the season and how the cows are and things.
Good. And I suppose our introduction with you maybe was with John Stanley. You have, I suppose, in any system you're going to have some surplus stock.
Yes, and particularly in a block spring calving system, getting everything in calf can be a challenge, particularly when it's been very cold or droughty season. Getting a second lactation was quite hard, and we didn't know the cows as well and things. So he had a client, and he selected 34 of, I thought, really lovely looking autumn calvers. And actually some of those were heifers we had imported in October 22 to make up our numbers. And they just hadn't got back into calf. They just hadn't. No, it must have been October 21, sorry. October 21, calved 22.
Yeah.
They missed the AI
Okay.
spring 22, so there they were ready for you to take last autumn.
And I think they're kind of unique group and it's such a big country agricultural wise as well. There'll be demand for them. They're not very common, so they're going to have a value to somebody.
I hope so. I know a few farms that have gone entirely over to Reds, and particularly the crossbreed Viking Red, because they have got that heterogeneous sort of toughness about them.
Yeah.
And it's a change for them. Sweden can't outwinter their cows. They can't grow as much forage as we can. So, they've done unbelievably well adapting to the system.
Yes.
I'm really pleased with that. There've been teething problems and obviously things we need to understand and fine tune, but they've done really well for me.
Very friendly cows anyway.
Yeah. Don't want them to be too friendly.
No.
Oh.
No, sure, look great. So we might have a look at your milking parlour there in the setup there in a minute.
For sure.
Okay. So Andrew, you're the farm manager?
Yes.
Okay, so you don't have a native accent anyway, so...
No.
Okay, you're from down under?
Down under, yes.
Yeah, and your hat tells us where you're from, so you're New Zealand?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, so you bring a lot of experience obviously in the whole grazing world?
I like to think so.
Yeah. And maybe what's different here is everything is all wintered, which obviously is commonplace for home, but here maybe it's not.
quite different for the UK.
Yeah.
So historically, would have some overwinter cover crops out of the arable rotation that we outwinter the cows on, and they are essentially they're still supplementary fed silage and hay through that period, and it's all, we still break fence, we still move the cows every day, twice a day.
So we're October 2nd or 3rd today, right?
Yes.
So when does your wintering regime start, or when do they?
Essentially from the first, once they're dried off, they'll go on to overwinter cover crops, or herbal layers, which are going to come out of rotation in the spring. So they're essentially sacrifice fields. So yeah, starting from January, essentially, we're dried off by Christmas.
Okay. So break fed every day, 12-hour breaks, 24-hour breaks?
12-hour breaks.
Yeah.
To put out 14 kilos of dry matter for the cows, they'll trample 40% of that if you only give them one shift, is my thoughts.
Yeah.
And it keeps them still. They don't walk so much. If you give them one shift.
So you would be doing it in paddocks like this, would you? Or
Essentially,
yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep, very similar.
Yeah. So, and you're supplementing with silage as well, are you?
Silage and hay, yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Why both, say? Why the 2 feeds as opposed to one, or?
It's usually, well, it's just being able to access. It probably comes down to what we can purchase at that particular time of year. We've only got to the point where we've grown sufficient forage to supplement them through winter.
Okay.
So, yeah, still trying to feed them adequate protein through that period is a struggle.
So on a field like this or a paddock like this, quite long, do you back fence or do you let them access back all the field?
We will back fence and move a trough.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
So how many in a group?
We usually end up splitting them, so it's sort of 140 in each group.
Yeah.
Young stock are all kept in their age groups until they essentially come into calf.
Yeah.
The R1s and R2s stay on herbal lays. They don't go on over winter cover crops now.
Okay.
They don't seem to do as much damage.
Yeah. And say how long to move how much input labour wise to move them? Or
it is quite intensive because there's a lot of bale feeding essentially with a hustler and roller.
Yeah.
But it's still probably only 4 hours labour a day. It's not massive.
One person?
Yeah, one person can
Yeah.
do all that.
Okay.
We have quite a skeleton crew
Yeah.
over winter.
And what's the main challenge in the winter? Is it rain, wind, combination, or?
Frost, ice,
Yeah.
ground freezing, trough freezing.
Yeah.
We don't have a high rainfall here. 800 mil, I don't think it's a lot. But yeah, just that frozen ground.
Yeah. So we saw bales on the way out. Do you put them out, say, in advance, or do you just draw them out every day as you need them?
No, I draw them out as I require them.
Yeah.
I'm not good enough to know what they're going to need in 6 months' time.
Right. Yeah. No, great.